so nice to see you virtually today. As you can tell, I am back and broadcasting from the church sanctuary for the first time in months. This is the beginning of our reopening plan. And so I welcome you on Facebook, on Zoom, if you're watching on the website later or on YouTube later. It is my joy to serve this community of Unity of New Westminster. Welcome to all of you. The Unity movement offers spiritual principles for full and abundant living. We draw on the teachings of Jesus as our primary way shower, our example. And we honor that there is wisdom in faith traditions, in story, in understanding everywhere. Unity honors every person's right to choose their own spiritual path. All are welcome here. All are worthy here. All belong here. All are celebrated here. We open our service this morning, as we do with everything in Unity, in a time of affirmative prayer. We begin in the spirit of truth and reconciliation and appreciation by acknowledging and recognizing the Kakite First Nation, as well as all Coast Salish peoples on whose traditional and unceded territories we live, we work, we play. We are so grateful that we are able to come together in this virtual experience, heart to heart, mind to mind, energetically. We know there is only one presence, one power. That presence, that power, has many names and is understood in many ways. And yet, in that one power, we are one. In that one power, we are connected and interconnected. And it is from that one power that we send a blessing. We feel a blessing of love for every being on this planet. We bless all. Whether we agree with them, whether we look like them, whatever our othernesses are, we see beyond to our oneness, to our connection. And we bless and love and comfort and appreciate all. Amen. Today's daily word is divine order. Divine order is always unfolding in my life and in the world. As spring ripens... That's okay. Would you like to fix that, Richard?
It's fine.
Done? Okay.
It's fixed.
Let's try that again. Without blowing anybody's eardrums off, hopefully. Divine order is always unfolding in my life and in the world. As spring ripens into summer each year, New leaves transform bare trees into canopies of green. Tiny seedlings grow into sturdy plants and decorate the landscape with an array of colorful blossoms. I marvel at the divine order demonstrated as the earth renews itself. I recognize that even as the earth appeared barren in wintertime, new life was preparing to spring forth. I notice this pattern in my life. I may be demonstrating visible growth in my life, or like the earth in winter, it may seem that my life is stagnant and barren. I remember that as the seasons of nature change, so do the seasons of my life, even when it is not apparent to me. I know that divine order is always unfolding in my life and in the world. And from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 4, verse 28, the earth produces of itself first the stalk, then the head, then the full grain in the head. I mentioned that today is the first day that we are back at the sanctuary, and I want to be clear that I am speaking to a room that has Richard and Walt and a whole bunch of empty chairs that I'm imagining, just like those baseball stadiums in South Korea, have pictures of all of you here. And it feels wonderful to be back in this sacred space that we call home at Unity of New Westminster. In the next few weeks, we will be unfolding some plan for inviting people back to live services. My thinking is that we will do stages, and we'll invite people who have not been able to be here, either not join us on the phone or not join us on technology, to be the first people that we invite back, at least give them first priority in terms of connecting with us again. And more will follow as Dr. Henry and Adrian Dix keep us updated on what they consider to be wise for British Columbia. And no, we are planning and thinking about you, about our community, and sending love, and knowing that the best way that we can serve our community is to keep ourselves connected and safe. And thank God that we have this miracle called the internet that allows us to do that. I want to share with you a video that was released by Jim Blake, who is the CEO of Unity Worldwide Headquarters, and it ties in with our subject today, the subject of protest and progress, the subject of discrimination, equality, and justice.
I serve as the CEO for Unity World Headquarters at Unity Village. We find ourselves in the midst of seeming chaos everywhere we look. While in the throes of the largest pandemic in a century, we are now seeing unprecedented nationwide unrest. These are not small issues we are trying to navigate. We are taking on the safety, health, and well-being of our families, friends, and loved ones, while at the same time exposing and overturning centuries of bias, privilege, and racism that has long been screaming to be acknowledged and addressed. We need profound change that preserves and protects the human rights of every individual in this country. It's a lot to process, individually or collectively. In the midst of so much divisiveness at every turn, it can be easy to become overwhelmed. There is tremendous pain, suffering, injustice that must be accounted for. My message today is to tell you that wherever you are in the midst of this, we see you, we feel you, we hear you. We are listening so that we may understand deeply what troubles you and how unity can be a source of comfort, education, and inspiration as we walk together and forge a new path forward, ushering in the great change that is so desperately needed right now. Our commitment and calling at Unity to help and serve has never been more steadfast or strong. And though we may not have all of the answers, we are working as hard as we can to provide a platform for the voices of change to be heard, to create a safe container that is steeped in spiritual principle so that we may together listen deeply, grieve, pray, connect with empathy, have dialogue, share information, and lift the consciousness and the conversation. May our prayers and our dialogue be transformed into spiritual right action that will create long-lasting and meaningful change. This is our commitment to you. We stand with you in unity.
On Memorial Day in the United States, last month, May 25th, 2020, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, a man named George Floyd was killed by police as he was being arrested for allegedly using a fraudulent $20 bill. He was forced to lie handcuffed face down as 3 officers pinned him to the ground. One of the officers knelt on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, despite George's repeated gasps of "I can't breathe" 16 times. His cries of please, and his cries for his mama. The kneeling continued for almost 3 minutes after George passed out and was unresponsive. It continued for a minute after the ambulance had arrived. Bystanders repeatedly yelled at the officers to stop. They told the officers that he was not resisting. They told the officers that he was bleeding from his nose. They told the officers that he was no longer responsive, and they asked them to check Floyd's pulse. One of the police officers, the one who was kneeling on George Floyd's neck, pulled out mace and threatened the bystanders if they came any closer. That police officer has since been charged with second-degree murder, and it has later been discovered that he's had 18 complaints on his official record, 2 of which ended in discipline from the department, including official letters of reprimand. Several bystanders, including a 17-year-old teenager named Darnella Frazier, recorded and then shared to social media this very disturbing video. The protest response was immediate It was intense, and it continues to this day, every day. It's been almost 3 weeks, and still it continues. And we know that there have been many, many protests against racism in the past. The movement called Black Lives Matter was born out of a previous protest movement and was reignited as a result of this tipping point, pivotal event. The rioting, as Martin Luther King said, is the language of the unheard. And what made this one so much more powerful than every race riot in the past is that it occurred in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of a time when across the globe, around the globe, people are dying from an infectious disease, a virus that is extremely active. People were so moved by this video and the injustice that they saw, that they came out in thousands and hundreds of thousands, despite the threats and danger that they faced to their own lives. The other very notable difference is that in these protests, white people are joining with black people, with people of color, to demand change, to demand a shift that has never been so strong as it is now. Reverend Al Sharpton, who gave the eulogy at George Floyd's memorial service in Minneapolis, noted, he quoted from Ecclesiastes, "To everything there is a season." And he said, quote, "There is a time and a season, and when I looked this time and saw marches in some cases where young whites outnumbered the blacks marching, I know that it's a different time and a different season." These are turbulent times. And there has been an unexpected gift with this pandemic. And that gift is that it has reminded us of how interconnected we are, how dependent on each other we are, how connected we are. It has also highlighted some of the inequities in our culture, inequities which have resulted in persons of color being disproportionately ill, disproportionately hospitalized, disproportionately dying, particularly in the United States. The pandemic has also led to many of us physically isolating at home, which means that we weren't distracted by our regular, overscheduled life. And I think because of that, we had more time to absorb some of what was happening. And then, as I said in my opening today, we had this magnificent gift of technology. The smartphone video, which doesn't lie because it's in real time, has helped us to understand that not all of the stories we have been told by authorities that we have trusted are necessarily true. And that mistrust and distrust and breaking of trust has led also to a groundswell of anger and a groundswell of understanding about what Black people have been saying. It's like finally we all hear it for the first time. The sharing of those videos on social media, the sharing of stories from people we know on social media has awakened a deep desire to right the inequities, to end the cruelties that happen to people of color every day. I have a friend who lives in Kansas City. Her name is Rhona Segarra. And she gave me permission to share a post that she wrote about her daughter, Imani. It is June the 2nd, 2020. My beautiful, sweet, and kind 23-year-old, tall, curly dark hair, brown-skinned daughter went to the store last night. She was nowhere near the protests. We live in suburbia. A woman she did not know comes up to her in the store and asks, "How are you with what is happening in the world right now?" My daughter responds, "Sad." The woman said, "Are you scared?" And my daughter said, "I am scared for all people." This woman said, "You should be. If my boyfriend was here, he would shoot your colored ass." My daughter bravely looked at her and said, "White is a color too." Then my sweet girl comes home and tells me, "What can I do?" I hug her, I kiss her, I tell her how incredibly much I love her. We talk about being safe. Stories like this, from people we know, resonate around the world. And finally, in countries where white people are in the majority, white people are acknowledging that the time has come for us to evolve away from judging each other by the color of our skin. And yet there's a level of discomfort in this whole discussion, because we don't quite know how to address race without offending someone. Few of us want to be viewed as racist. We don't want to appear insensitive. We don't want to say the wrong thing. And one of the strategies is to pretend that there is no difference. To deny that we actually look different. When my son, David, was 6 years old, he was excited because he was going to a birthday party for his friend Anthony. A family member was visiting and said, "Hey Dave, who's Anthony?" And Anthony, David said, "Anthony's my brown friend." And the family member, we're South Africans, so we're very aware. Family member said, "Oh, you shouldn't say that." And I started to think about that, because I'm not sure that that was the appropriate or wise response. You see, David didn't see any judgment in the color. It was no more or less of a descriptor than saying that Anthony had blonde hair, or blue eyes, or the girl across the street. And so in our attempt to not be viewed as racist, we deny that there is a difference when there actually is a difference. It's literally trying to say that black isn't white and white isn't black. No. The goal isn't to pretend that the physical difference isn't there. The goal is to transcend and recognize that those things make us interesting and different and beautiful without any negative judgment. When we speak about a response to the words Black Lives Matter, and we respond with discomfort by saying all lives matter. Yes, of course, all lives matter. All lives matter. And to the extent that black lives are not treated equally to white lives, we fail in our goal of all lives matter. To the extent that Indigenous people are discriminated against, we might say all lives matter, but Indigenous lives need some attention. Black lives need some attention. My whole body is healthy except for the cut on my finger. Yes, my body matters. The cut on my finger right now is what deserves my attention. It is the place I want to focus so that my body is healed, my body is whole. And to the extent that a part of my whole is broken, I cannot say that I am whole. And so, to the extent that I fix and heal a system in my body that is broken. I raise the health of the entire body. Yes, all lives matter. And to support that goal, we need to acknowledge where the brokenness is. Black lives matter. Indigenous lives matter. Children's lives matter. Homeless lives matter. Addicted lives matter. Martin Luther King said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. The areas of inequity that cry out for healing and structural connection in our society have been highlighted through this pandemic and then through this police brutality that occurred not just in the United States but also here in Canada. We speak a lot about the idea of structural correction. Our system is broken. You may have heard the term white privilege. What does that mean? Does it mean that all whites are privileged more than people of color? What it means is that our system has a tendency to unconsciously prefer one race over another. Of course, there are people who are white who are feeling underprivileged. So it's not that. The difference is that the underprivileged white person is likely to be treated with more preference than the underprivileged person of color. 32 years ago, in 1988, a woman named Peggy McIntosh, who was the Associate Director of the Wellesley College Center for Research on Women, wrote an essay called The Invisible Knapsack of White Privilege. And she helped to identify areas in which those of us who are white might have blind spots. We don't choose racism, but rather the system that we live in favors us in subtle and sometimes not so subtle ways. And she writes, quote, "As a white person, I realized I had been taught about racism as something that puts others at a disadvantage, but had been taught not to see one of its corollary aspects, which is that white privilege puts me at an advantage." The discussions that we're having now are about shining a light on some of these systemic differences that put some of us at an unearned advantage, while others are at an unearned disadvantage. She gives some examples. It's like, you know you're privileged when. I can go shopping alone most of the time, pretty well assured that I will not be followed or harassed. Elissa's daughter, Imani, is proof that that did not happen for her. When I'm told about my national heritage or about civilization, I am shown that people of my color made civilization what it is. I can go into a supermarket and find the staple foods which fit with my cultural traditions. I can go into a hairdresser's shop and find someone who can cut my hair. I'm never asked to speak for all the people of my racial group. I can be pretty sure that if I ask to talk to the person in charge, I will be facing a person of my race. If a traffic cop pulls me over, I can be sure that I haven't been singled out because of my race. I can easily buy posters, postcards, picture books, greeting cards, dolls, toys, and children's magazines featuring people of my race. I could choose blemish color makeup or bandages in flesh color and have them more or less match my skin. And for me, my thought is I am unlikely to be assaulted or arrested if I jaywalk. These are the systems that we're speaking about when we're saying that there is injustice, inequity. So what can we do about this? Martin Luther King Jr. said, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." St. Paul said, "Be transformed by the renewing of your mind." And that is what we're seeing all over the planet. People who are willing to overcome the inertia and meet this moment rather than miss this moment, this opportunity to shift our humanity into a place of greater love and acceptance and inclusion and fairness. Because all lives matter. And we want to live into that. And we live into that by fixing the parts that are broken. Change begins with each one of us. If protesting is what you need to do, that's yours to do, peacefully. If staying home and asking yourself difficult, uncomfortable questions about your views on race, on difference, then that is as powerful. Because one mind changed, and another mind's change, and another mind changes, eventually changes a society. Holding the high watch is a sacred and sometimes challenging task. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 35, "Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened and the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then the lame shall leap like a deer, and the tongue of the speechless sing for joy. We're in this place where what we can do is look within to see where we have been blind. Where have our blind spots been? We can unstop our ears and listen. And know that the more we resist listening, the more important it is to listen. The tongue of the speechless sing for joy. Those who had no voice are now being heard. And that will bring joy. And one of the things I want to leave us with is this idea that we want to move to the most loving thing we can do, to be the change that we want to be. And if we ourselves are prejudiced against those who we view as prejudice, in the view of ending prejudice, then we are not living into being the change that we want to see. That's a hard pill to swallow. Because what I'm saying is, look within. Don't force somebody else. Let your light shine. Let them take care of their own journey. And stand for what is true, what is fair, what is just, what is equal, what is loving. Minds will shift when they're ready. The renewal of minds is underway in these discussions. Remember, Jesus told us to love one another in the same manner that he loved. And if we are to follow his example, we will recognize that he was never passive. He stood for peace, not quiet. He had the courage to take a stand. Let us take a stand. He reminded us of our obligation to take care of one another. Let us create a place of safety where we can talk, where we can listen, where we can understand, so that we can fix. Whatever you did for one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you did for me. At the end of George Floyd's memorial service, the Reverend Brian Herron said this: "We pray this prayer in the name of an innocent black man, by the name of Jesus, who was killed by a government." What a powerful reminder that we are all one. Our depictions of Jesus tend to be white man, black man, innocent, killed for what he believed in. Paul McCartney wrote this beautiful song in honor of the civil rights movement. I invite you to listen to the words as our meditation today.
Blackbird sing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to rise. Blackbird sing in the dead of night. Take these sunken eyes and learn to see. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to be free. You were only waiting for this moment to be free.
We're all waiting for this moment to be free. What can I do? What can I uncover from within me that is more open, that will lead to a more willingness, to a more loving response, to action? What unconscious belief have I been holding on to that I am now willing to release? In my goal that all lives matter, I recognize that Black lives matter. And I commit to correcting the injustice in my thinking, any judgment I may be holding. I am willing to hold my assumptions to the light. So that the assumptions may be revealed for the discomforting lie that they are. I am love. My neighbor is love. And so it is. Amen. Thank you for being with me on that very powerful journey. I hope what I have done is sparked some thoughts, some curiosity, so that maybe you will read or watch a movie or have a conversation about this meaningful subject. This Tuesday on Zoom at 11 o'clock, I invite you to join me for a conversation on this very topic, on progress, protest, race, differences. Whatever you want to share about your experience, I invite you to join me at 11 o'clock on Tuesday. On Thursday at 11 o'clock, join as well for our prayer service. And remember that Silent Unity is always available, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 816-969-2000. If you would like to have your name added to our prayer chain, or if you would like to have one-on-one prayer with a trained prayer chaplain who will hold your concern in her heart and privacy, then please email us with your name and phone number, and we will have a prayer chaplain connect with you. If you need to talk or you need resources of some kind, I invite you to email or call the office and let us know, and we will do what we can to support you. Tomorrow is the 1-year anniversary of my ordination. And tomorrow, a few of my friends are being ordained and graduating from school. And I am so excited to see them. In Canada, Randy Jacobs is going to be ordained as a minister tomorrow. And so we, as a Canadian movement, are so excited to have another minister in our fold. And Randy, on behalf of Unity of New Westminster, congratulations. It will be, you're already a beautiful minister, Reverend Randy. Fellowship after the service on Zoom. If you, after watching on Facebook, join us on Zoom and grab a coffee, and we will get together and pretend that we're here having coffee here. And so we just chat and catch up with each other, and it's a really fun time to see everybody's faces. Now I invite you to take your gifts, your donations, your support, financial support in your hands and in your heart. We're so grateful for the gifts that we receive to keep our ministry going. And I invite you to sing this song with us.
I am so blessed, I am so blessed, I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed, I am so blessed, I am so grateful, I am so blessed, I am so blessed, I am so blessed, I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed, I
so blessed. We are so blessed to live in this beautiful country. We are so blessed to have our health, to have our families, to have our community. We are so blessed in so many ways. We are so blessed that we have leadership that recognizes the need for transformation. And we are so blessed that we are in a place that is safe enough to have those courageous conversations. Your life matters. Amen.